Your story is being written every second you take a breath. Every decision you make, every word that you speak, every lesson that you learn. You are a collection of the things you value, always in the process of change. Who are you becoming?
Well, I have met a lot of people in my life, just like you have. And one of the things that's interesting to me is when you meet somebody that's, not the same as everybody else, I always kind of wonder, how did they get that way? What is it about them? What about their story? What about their experience got them to that place? And so, for example, every once in a while, I'll meet somebody that just has no energy for life, just no spark, no desire, no nothing. And really, you'd almost have to describe their posture as they're just apathetic about everything. And I always kind of walk away and I wonder, how did they get that way? What happened? Now, I've also met some people kind of way over on the other side, people that are just so driven and so focused that you would almost say their posture is obsessed. I mean, they're just so locked in on something. And I kind of wonder, how did they get that way? Why does one person have a posture that's apathetic and somebody else has a posture of just focus and obsession? And what happened to get them to that place? For most of us, and I'm assuming for you too, you're somewhere between apathy and obsession. That's probably somewhere between those two extremes is your posture when it comes to life. And posture, I know it sounds kind of like a strange word, but how you approach life, how you interact with other people, how other people experience you is actually really pretty complicated. It's kind of complex because it changes in almost every different situation or circumstance you find yourself in. So your posture at work, your posture at home, your posture in your relationships, it seems like it needs to change. And that's not being a chameleon. That's not being a person that doesn't have integrity. That's just reality. So for example, again, at work, and maybe you've heard this, they tell you that you need to have a posture that says, in essence, dress for the job you want, not the job you have. Now that's old school. Nowadays, when everybody's working from home on video, it's like, just dress for your job, right? Just put on pants in case you stand up, please. But the whole idea behind it was very simple, that if you want to go to the next level, you need to show that you're comfortable and you look like you belong at the next level. And so that's a posture at work. But in relationships, that posture is totally different. You have to change again. Nowadays, the posture in relationships, whether you like it or not, nowadays the mindset when it comes to relationships is, I have a posture of acceptance. Like, don't judge, don't make decisions, stay in your lane. And kind of the ugly version of that is mind your own business. If you don't agree with me, if you're not on board with me, then you need to just stuff it and eat it and accept me because that's the way I am. And that's the posture you're supposed to have when it comes to relationships. So that's kind of complicated. And then there's the posture you have when it comes to you. And I know that sounds a little strange, but all of us have kind of the running dialogue and narrative going through our heads as we're thinking about what just happened and who just happened and how we feel about what happened and how we feel about us and what just happened. And all of that stuff is always going on in our heads all the time. And my guess is that you like to be appreciated, that you like to have people notice when you do something and you work hard at something and you make a commitment and you follow through with it, that you would like people to notice that you have some strengths and you have some abilities and you're actually a pretty unique and important person. I mean, everybody wants to feel like people see that. And so just completely aside, if nobody's told you that you're great today, and I really mean this, I sincerely mean this, you're doing great. You really are. You've got lots of gifts. You've got lots of things that you do. There's places where you serve and sacrifice and you help other people and you love people. And for just a minute, just accept it. You're doing great, okay? You really, really are. But that's not always what we hear. Sometimes what we hear is we should have done better, Or why doesn't anybody appreciate me? Or if it really was great, somebody would have noticed. And it leaves us in this strange thing of, what is my posture when it even comes to me? Because we don't want to be that person that nobody likes, right? I mean, you've been around them. Everything has to revolve around them. Whether it's because they're always the victim, or whether they're arrogant and entitled, or whether they're always drama, or whatever it is. It's like, I don't want to be around that person, and I don't want to be that person. But I still want people to recognize that I'm important, that I'm making contributions, that I'm a valuable person. And so we get stuff like I ran across the other day. We get a tweet, and you'll have to think about this one for just a second. I read this tweet, and I had to do a double take. I'm like, what? And it said this: I generally consider myself to be a modest and humble person, comma, it's what makes me so awesome. First of all, you really can't even say that you're humble, right? Because then it's like, oh, well, aren't you something, And then to say I'm awesome because I'm humble, again, we get in this kind of crazy cement mixer going in our heads when we try to figure out what is my posture when it comes to everybody else. I think a guy named Jerry figured it out. Have you ever heard of Jerry Merriman? Which is a great name, by the way. Merryman. Jerry Merriman. You're going to want to say that later because it's just fun to say. Jerry Merriman. Jerry Merriman, you've probably never heard of him, but he did something that literally changed the world. He really did. And he did this in the late 70s, at a time when a lot of things from a technological standpoint were still pretty primitive. Jerry Merriman invented the portable calculator with an integrated circuit board. And you think, well, okay, what's the big deal? That integrated circuit board, and I didn't know this either, I had to read this because I didn't know all this stuff. This integrated circuit board actually has become and still is the foundation for all of the technology that you use. Your phone, your laptop, your tablet is based on the same technology that Jerry invented in the late 70s when he was working for Texas Instruments, which is pretty crazy to me. But when people that knew Jerry's passed away, when people that knew Jerry talked about him, they said he was just very funny and kind. But he really wasn't interested in money. He really wasn't all that interested in position. He really wasn't all that interested in awards. What he really cared about, and this is according to his wife, is that his friends felt like he worked hard and they liked being around him. And I thought, that's it. That's the posture we're all looking for. I want to do something meaningful with my life. I want to make an impact. I want to use the gifts God's given me. But at the same time, I want to enjoy the people in my life, and I want the people in my life to enjoy me. That's really the posture that I want. So why is it so complicated? Well, you're probably not surprised, but Jerry wasn't really the first person to figure this out. Jesus actually figured this out long before Jerry was ever born. And Jesus said something about this, and he didn't say it with his words. He said it with his actions. That he said, your posture matters more than your position. Your posture in life matters so much more than your position in life. At a time when we're so apt to define ourselves by our roles, by our talents, by our job, by our title, Jesus is saying, it's your posture. It's your posture that matters so much more than the position that you have. And Jesus was one of those guys, he didn't just have a philosophy of life, he lived it. And so we're going to look at a set of events that happened in his life in John chapter 13. And in John 13, we see Jesus do something that's just extraordinary. And he doesn't say much about it, but it leaves an incredibly powerful impact on the people that witnessed it. But before we get to John chapter 13, to really grasp everything that happened, we have to go back about 4 days before the events of John chapter 13. Because Jesus did something 4 days before that was incredibly normal. It was something that hundreds of people did every single day and nobody paid any attention to. But when Jesus did it, all of a sudden, it was incredibly different. Jesus got on a donkey and he rode into the city of Jerusalem. Dozens, maybe hundreds, maybe thousands of people did every single day. But for some reason, when Jesus did this, fulfilling a prophecy that was spoken hundreds of years before, it sparked something in the city. People went nuts. It was like the unexpected arrival of a famous person or a dignitary or a world leader, or somebody showed up and nobody expected him to be there, and people just started going crazy. I mean, before he ever got to the city, he is on the road, on the way in. Jerusalem has a bunch of walls around it. You have to go in through gates. Before he even got to the gate, he's out on the road as far away as you can still see him, and people lost it. They started running out there. They were so excited to see him coming on this donkey. It seemed to mean so much to them. And they ran out there and they threw their coats on the ground and they threw branches on the ground. It was their version of rolling out the red carpet. And in the middle of this crowd and this chaos and this energy and this buzz, I mean, you've probably been there. You felt it at a stadium. You felt it when something important was happening. People start shouting and they're running around and they're jumping, and it's adults and kids, and it's just kind of this mob scene. And somebody yells out, "Blessed is Jesus, the Blessed One." And somebody, I don't know who, somebody had the guts to yell out, "The King of Israel is coming." And that was treason. That was executable on the spot. But not only did one person say it, dozens and hundreds, and eventually so many that there was no way you could execute everybody that was saying the King is coming. And for those closest followers of Jesus, those 12 men that had been with him from the earliest days, I'm sure they thought, finally. We have been sleeping out in the middle of nowhere. We have been not eating regularly. We have not been working steadily. We haven't had anything. And the critics and the people that don't like him have been making our lives miserable. And our families are starting to question us. And people see us as weirdos and idiots for following someone. And finally, everything's about to change. The King has come into his city and everything is going to be different. They were so excited about what was going to happen. And they felt like everything they had waited on, everything they had been working towards, it was finally about to change. But 4 days later, John chapter 13, they're in a room. It's just 13 of them. And these 13, Jesus and the 12, are in a weird moment. And what I hope that you can do as we talk about this is you can see yourself as a fly on the wall, that you can watch this unfold. Because it's an odd kind of atmosphere. There's all the excitement about what happened a few days ago. There's all the anticipation about what could be. But something's off. There's a weird vibe. There's a tension, and they can't quite put their finger on it. 12 of them are arguing about who is most important. Like, if he's king, all right, who gets to be second, right? Who's going to be the prince? Who's going to be the next in charge? And they're arguing about that. But in the back of their minds, they also realize, it was 4 days ago and nothing's really happened. And it seems like the critics, it seems like the skeptics, it seems like our enemies are actually gaining, even though we thought 4 days ago when we came into the city that everything was changing. And in the middle of this unusual, strange vibe, John 13 happens. Look at John 13. Verse 1. So it was just before the Passover festival. Jesus knew the hour had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. The evening meal was in progress. And the devil had already prompted Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So, it's a really important word. He knew all of that. So, he got up from the meal. He took off his outer clothing and wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. Stop there. There's 12 out of 13 that are sitting at a table. And 12 out of 13 are arguing about who's most important. And 12 out of 13 have no idea that at this time tomorrow, one will be buried in a tomb. And in the middle of all of this, they're eating. Jesus stops. He stands up and he starts to move across the room. And remember, you're sitting there, you're watching all of this. They had learned by now that when Jesus does something unusual, when he does something you don't expect, we should pay attention. And so they watch him as he gets up. And he moves over to the corner of the room, and he's messing with some things, not quite sure. The conversations are still going, but they're starting to die down. And it starts to dawn on the people sitting around the table. He's going to wash his feet. I should have done that for him. Man, that was my chance. I could have shown everybody that I was a better follower, that I loved him more than they. I should have done that for him. And it got quieter and quieter because they realized something. Jesus wasn't going to wash his feet. He started moving towards them, and he started to wash their feet. And everyone sitting there had the same thought. This can't happen. I should have done this. Why didn't John do this? Why didn't Andrew do this? They're the youngest. They should have done this. This cannot happen. This thing, it cannot happen. It should not happen. It is happening. It's happening. Jesus is about to wash their feet. And you might think, well, what's the big deal? What is that about? We don't live in that culture. We don't do that. Is that just kind of a hospitality thing? Is that a nicety? Well, yes, but it's also eminently practical. Because, not to gross you out, but if you wear sandals and you walk on dusty roads with animals and no sewage and no garbage collection and on and on and on, guess what your feet get? They get nasty, right? And why that is really important is because a lot of times you're going to eat a special dinner like this one laying down with your feet next to somebody else. It wasn't just a nicety. It was a need, but it was nasty. And everybody sitting at the table said, I would have washed Jesus' feet, but I'm not washing all the rest of these guys' feet. Somebody else can do that. I'll wash his, but I'm not going to wash theirs. Because I have a position to maintain. And all the while, Jesus is working his way. Started with the first one. All 24 feet. All the nastiness. All the time it took, each one individually. Mostly in silence, except for Peter. Peter had something to say. And we can look at that at another time. But he starts arguing with Jesus about the fact that, wait, you're going to wash my feet? No, you can't wash my feet. Well, if I don't wash your feet, oh, well, in that case, wash me, all of me. You know, and it's like, you just don't get it, do you, man? You just don't get it. And Jesus washes all of their feet. And here's what I love about Jesus. He doesn't leave anything to chance. He's like, I don't want you to miss this. Look at chapter 13, verse 12. When he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place again. I guarantee you it was probably silent most of the time. Do you understand what I've done for you? He asked them. You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. And now that I, your Lord and teacher, and I would have thrown in, and the one that everybody calls king, now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you should also wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. Very truly, I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you'll be blessed if you do them. Jesus washed their feet. Gross, nasty feet. Not one, not two, but 24 of them. And he stopped and he paused and he said, do not miss. If you want to follow me, do not miss what just happened. Jesus washed Judas's feet, the one who within a few hours would betray him. Jesus washed Peter's feet, the one who very early the next morning would deny even knowing who he was and argued with him about the fact that Jesus wasn't washing his feet right. He washed his feet. Jesus washed Thomas's feet, who for the next couple of weeks would doubt that Jesus was who he said he was. You see, I think Jesus proved a point here. He said, when it comes to love, when it comes to serving, I set no conditions. I set an example. I set no conditions. There's no condition on who I will love and who I will serve. And I will set an example. for you who follow me to follow. Because for Jesus, posture was so much more important than position. Lord, teacher, rabbi, Messiah, king. Yeah, I am every one of those. And if it takes washing your feet to show you that I love you and to model service to you, that's what I'll do. I mean, he could have overwhelmed them with his power. He could have overcome them with his glory and just given them a little glimpse of who he was. But instead, he chose to attract them with love and service. He drew them in instead of overwhelming them. It's just an incredible example. And then Jesus, he doesn't want us to miss anything. He makes it so clear to those 12 men in that room and to anyone who would follow him later. He makes it so clear. If I do this for you, you can do it for each other. If I am willing, your king is willing to wash your feet, how much more so can you love and serve each other? And not that he would ever say we shouldn't serve those outside the church. We obviously should. He says the first will be last and the greatest among you is the one who serves. I mean, yes, but we have to serve. We absolutely have to serve those who follow him. Because this was for those 12 in that room, in that moment. Serve each other, just like I've done for you. And when you do, which is just incredible to me, I'll bless you. Your life will be blessed when you do what I have done. You've heard me. You've seen me. You've experienced me. Now go and do it. Go and follow my example. There's really no question about it. We're not left with any options here, but Jesus doesn't force us into it. He loves us into it. He says, I love you like this. I will serve you like this. If it takes washing feet to show you love, I will wash your feet. Go and do the same. Peter, he was in the room. He experienced it. He had his feet washed. He argued with Jesus, the whole thing. A couple decades later, he would write something. He said, for those of us that are followers of Jesus, he said, you have this special distinction. And there is a position that you hold. As a matter of fact, he says, you are a royal priesthood, which is a pretty fascinating title. You're a royal, set apart, loved, privileged, put in a different position than everybody else. You are a royal priesthood. Now, I know that in time, the idea of what a priest is and what a priest does has changed. But when Peter wrote that, priests really only had two jobs. They served God, but the way they served God was by serving other people and pointing them to God. That was the job of a priest. And so when you put all this together, Peter is basically saying, look, if you're a follower of Jesus, that you are a royal priesthood. You are special, set apart, and privileged to serve God. And the way you do that is by serving and pointing. We serve and we point. We serve other people to show them God's love, and we point them to God so that they will know the God that we know. Because we're loved so well. Because Jesus has served us so well. It gives us all the fuel. It gives us all the motivation we need to do the same. To take on that posture of a servant. Now, I know that you serve. I know you do. If you live with other people, you serve, right? Whether it's a roommate, a family member, a spouse, or kids, or whatever, you serve. I remember when our kids got a little bit old enough to start doing chores. And it was funny because they were really into it at first because we said, you guys get to help mom and dad, and we're going to do this as a family. And they're like, I get to help, And we made up a little board and wrote all the chores on there. And everybody's very excited. It lasted for a good 2 or 3 minutes. And and they started doing chores. And then within a week or 10 days or whatever it was, I remember one specific time of asking one of them to take out the trash. That was their chore, to just literally take the bag out of the kitchen, walk outside, put it in a dumpster, all done, that's it, no more. You'd have thought I asked them to cut off their right arm and bring it to me, right? And it just dawned on me, and I got to admit, I was being sarcastic, I wasn't being holy. Some people think, we give our kids chores to teach them responsibility. I'm like, no, we got a lot to do, and I'm lazy, and I need some help. I'm not doing this on my own. And we were going back and forth, and they said, I don't like doing chores. I don't know why I have to do chores. God spoke through me. And I said, oh, no. You don't get to do chores. You get to serve your family. You can imagine how that went over. The eye rolls literally flipped their whole head back. But you know what? It's true, isn't it? It's true. It's true. When you live with people that you love, I mean, it's not always easy. It's not always fun. But when you serve them, it is actually a privilege. You get to serve your family. And I know a lot of you where you work and the things you do at your office or your place of employment or whatever, you serve the people there too. Because you're a loving person, you're a good person, you want other people to do well, and you listen and you help with stuff and you do extra and you care about the people that you're with and you want them to succeed, and you serve at work and you serve at home. And so many of you serve at church. I remember, it's probably about 6 or 7 years ago now, our church was helping another church that was being planted. And they asked us, they said, hey, would you help us get the word out? Well, sure, yeah, we'll be happy to help, whatever, They wanted to hand out flyers that invited people to the grand opening of the church plant. Great, okay, I'll do that. And then they said, we're leaving Saturday morning at 6. Come on, man. I can find a lot of things to do on a Saturday. I mean, it's Saturday and it's 6. I mean, some of you people get up early and you like that, but I'm thinking like, it's 6. I mean, that's just too early. But I'll go. I'm serve because I want to be a servant. And I went. I'm walking around the neighborhood. We went in little groups of 2 and 3, and we're handing out these cards. And most of the time, we're just leaving on people's doors because Saturday at 6, and nobody's going to come open the door. And then if they do, they're mad, but, or they're really odd, hey, come on in. Like, no, just give me a card. Anyway, sorry. We're going around. We're passing out these cards, and there happens to be this guy in his backyard. He comes to the front yard. Come to find out, he hadn't gone to bed yet from Friday night. Wow, dude. Start talking to him a little bit. Hand him a card, tell him about the church. He's a nice guy, probably 30. He's pretty rough. Rough in his language, rough in his, opinions and the whole thing, which is fine. And we talked for, 5 or 10 minutes. And he actually seemed genuinely interested. Really? Yeah, right down. When do they start? Tell him and everything. Gave him the card, and he's like, I'm going to check it out. And I got to be honest, walking away, I thought, I hope he does. We'll see. Come to find out he did. He started going to that little church plant. Come to find out about 3-4 months later, he gave his life to Christ and he got baptized, which is incredible. I got a chance to reconnect with him not too long ago. His name's Troy. Troy is still following Jesus and still telling other people about following Jesus. Troy used to hold fights in his backyard. He had a real life fight club. That's how he made money. His whole life has changed. I'm not taking any credit for what God did, but I look at that and I say, I'm glad I got to be part of that. I'm glad I chose to serve. It was Saturday at 6. And I said, you know what? That's the posture I want. And that really underlines what we've been talking about through this whole series. Our experiences drive who we become. We've been talking about becoming the person that God created us to be. A person who is known by how well they love. A person that has a joy inside that they can't quite explain, but it seems like it's always there no matter what's happening. That we are becoming that person, the person God created us to be. And the experiences we have drive that. And every time we say yes to serving, what happens is it changes our posture. It allows us to take part in something much more important, much more meaningful. And God changes us in the process. I don't know if you know this or not, but as a church, we've constantly seen new people streaming in over these last several months. And last week, we had a welcome to the neighborhood. 2 weeks ago, we had a welcome to the neighborhood. We had over 30, 35 people come, families and kids and friends that wanted to know what is it about being part of Mountain Ridge Church. They had preschoolers, they had children, they had junior high and high school age. There were singles, there were married, there were young adults, there were older adults. It was just this great mixture of people that have come to our church. And I would ask you this morning, would you wash their feet? I know that's a deep, heavy question, But it's real, isn't it? If you want to become the person that God created you to be, we take on the posture of a servant, and the servant's posture says, well, what needs to be done? Because that's what I want to do. Because I want my life to be meaningful. I want to be a person that's known for loving. I want the joy that God designed me to have. And from the example that Jesus showed, there's a simple test. Would you wash their feet? I know it's figurative. We don't walk around washing people's feet anymore. But would you serve them? Would you say yes? Yeah, I want to serve. I want to help. And yes, I'm serving at home. And yes, I'm serving at work. And the question I have for you today is, would you serve the followers of Jesus? Whether it be preschoolers, children, students, couples, singles, young marrieds, older adults, whatever it is, it doesn't really matter. Would you serve them? Because as I said, you have a unique set of gifts and skills and abilities. And the things you do make a difference. Would you put them into practice? Would you serve the people that you follow Jesus with? I've told you throughout this series, I'm going to keep asking you a question, and I know it's a heavy one, but it's an important one. And we talked about it with baptism. We talked about it with understanding how we love God, how we hear from God, how we talk back to God. Pastor Corey did a great job last week talking about how we do it in relationships. If you're a follower of Jesus and you're not serving, what are you doing? What are you doing? And it's not a guilt question. Believe me, it's not. But if you're a follower of Jesus and you're not serving other followers of Jesus, what are you doing? Because I want you to become who he created you to be. And he has a plan and a map, and it's not going to be horrible and hard and painful and ugly all the time. It's going to be that situation where you have gifts, you have abilities, and God is going to put you in a place where you can make an impact. And at the same time, God will change you. So if you're a follower of Jesus, are you serving other followers of Jesus? Because that's who we're going to be as a church. We're going to be the kind of church that says we are for our neighbors, we are for each other. And the way we do that, one of the ways we express that, is we serve each other. We're going to take seriously what Jesus said, that the greatest among us is the one who serves. Let's pray together.